Right, so hi, you're tuning into the JS Talk Show where we discuss justice solutions across the globe. Our interviewee today is Tylea. A little bit about Tylea. She graduated from PC in 2004. She is originally from New Jersey and currently living in DC and working for the LF-USA as a compliance coordinator. Tylea, would you mind telling us a little bit about what you do there?
Sure. I am a compliance coordinator for the Youth Apparel Division of LF-USA. LF-USA is one of the biggest apparel importers to the United States, and I help manage the social auditing program. So it's basically making sure that all of our things that we're using for production are up to the proper codes. So making sure that there's no child labor, that everyone's being paid proper wages, that there are no health and safety violations, and so on and so forth.
Oh, great. That sounds really interesting.
All right, on to the next question. When the NGWF was first started, what was the situation like in Nicaragua at the time that things started to pick up? Like, what was going on over there?
I went to work at the Bermuda Cooperative in the fall of 2006 to work as a production assistant. So it was basically an internship / entry-level position at the factory. And when I started working there, the factory was in this really painful growth period where, you know, they had been open for a few years and they were starting to grow, and sort of the workers wanted to really become independent, but they were also still very reliant on the nonprofit that had helped to start them. So there was a lot of sort of strife and struggle between the workers and the nonprofit that I just sort of happened to come up into at that particular time. So it was actually a really difficult period for me, but mostly for the workers and for the nonprofit, and figuring out who's going to make what decisions, or who basically has the final say in this type of situation. So things were kind of messy, I would say, at that point. But the women, the workers, had a good amount of business. They were getting better at what they were doing. The quality was getting better. So it definitely felt like things were improving, but it was like a lot of growing pains at that particular moment.
Okay. And then, as a PC student, how did you become aware of the situation going on at the time in Nicaragua, and what particularly spiked your interest in the work that was going on over there in Nicaragua?
I had become involved with workers' rights issues while I was at PC, and realized, I'm not even sure when exactly, but at some point during my time that I was particularly interested in apparel production. So during my senior year for focus, that was really my focus, is what are some alternatives for apparel production that don't involve exploiting workers. And so I knew that was something that I was interested in. After I graduated, I moved back to DC to work on a couple different areas of economic justice, and still had this feeling that I wanted to really work more directly with apparel production, specifically, as opposed to just workers' rights in general. So I spent a lot of time surfing the internet, trying to find opportunities, and this one came up, and it was the only sort of fair trade, worker-owned factory that I could find that actually wanted someone to come from overseas to help. So I jumped at the chance, quit my job, sold my car, moved to Nicaragua.
Wow.
I didn't know before I left the situation that was going on there. I had no idea. Outside of sort of the broad context of Nicaragua's political economic situation, I didn't really realize what was going on at the factory level at all until I got there.
All right, and I guess some background info on the NGWF. How was it started? I mean, who was involved, or the logistics behind how it took off?
So I was working at the factory at the co-op with another young woman named Katie. She was also working, doing more sales and administrative stuff while I was working more on the production end. But we became friends, and after we both left the factory, we wanted to continue to help and work with the cooperative. So she and I worked together to form the Nicaraguan Garment Workers Fund as a nonprofit in the United States, with the goal of helping the cooperative transition from this sort of weird, messy, quasi-nonprofit project to something that's truly a worker cooperative and democratic workplace, where the machine operators and the cutters and the stockers all have a say in what's going on in their jobs. So that was, and we were always from the very beginning very clear of what our goal was. This is really to get them from point A to point B, to help them get there.
Okay. And then I guess another key question is, are the workers in the sweatshops like aware of the NGWF and like what its mission is and like what it stands for? Like, do they know what's going on with the group?
No, we, like I said, the goal of the Nicaraguan Workers Fund was always, the scope was always intentionally very small, partially because I had seen so many nonprofits going overseas and doing development work and just starting spawns of sort of dependent projects that really relied on the nonprofits from the United States for funding, for guidance, for management, for everything, instead of focusing, it was the approach was really to go broad instead of to go deep. And so we were actually hoping to do something different and really focus deeply in one place and then move on from there. So I don't think that many folks outside of that particular factory knew about the Nicaraguan Garment Workers Fund. That wasn't really our goal either at the time.
It sounds that you guys were really focused on awareness, but was there any action that you took specifically that you could tell us about?
Well, sure. We yes, tested cooperative in a number of ways, and it was all initiated by them. So it wasn't that we came up with a strategic plan and then followed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We could have done that, but we decided to really let the workers lead, and that we would sort of fill in where they needed us to. So we did everything from technology development, like building them a website, teaching them how to use the website and update it themselves, helping them doing branding, and sort of market identity work. We also sold a bunch of their shirts and so did a lot of marketing and sales, and even bigger than that was really working on the distribution and logistics for selling their t-shirts, as well as looking into new markets of materials. So we did a lot of background stuff that speaking English and having a high-speed internet connection and a cell phone is much easier to do.
Definitely.
I'm wondering, with teaching them these skills, like speaking English with the internet, did you confront any issues with like culture or like was it hard integrating these practices into their system?
Yeah, and there's absolutely cultural barriers. And at this point now, myself and the women in the co-op were all friends for a long time now. But in the beginning, when we were trying to work on our sort of formalizing our business relationship, there were tons of barriers. And it's a really simple one that I can give you, or one or two that I can give you that seem really simple, but when you're trying to work on business development for a worker-owned cooperative, actually really makes a big difference. They're just very, very effusive and loving and affectionate. And so if you send an email and you say, "Hi, please just give me the tracking number. I have an emergency. I need to know where the shipment is."
Yep.
And they're like, "Oh, hello. I hope your dad's doing well. I hope your family's well. Good. How are you? My son was asking about you." They're wonderful. They're awesome. But I'm like, all right, we got to get this done. We have to get down to business. And they're like, but we can't get to business until we had this relationship time.
That's funny.
And we've gotten past that to a certain degree. We both have met in the middle. But that's just one very small example. Another example, also really small, I was working with them on some women's little jackets. So we were doing some product development, which is always a challenge, no matter what factory you're in, but especially if you're in one where there aren't necessarily tons of people there with a super high level of training. And so they were supposed to put in shoulder pads, but just really small shoulder pads, and then they ended up getting these really huge ones that were like went out to here. It looked like 1985, like Armani, something crazy. And they just didn't understand why why that wouldn't be a viable product. So anyway, there's tons and tons of little things like that really add up, for sure.
Very nice. Now, as far as you talked about relationship, which is really